several people have said, you should suspect that, and I do. It's not that I don't, but I can't prove anything either. But since then, about 2 to 3 weeks after that business trip is when he went to the hospital, and he almost died. They told me flat out that had he not been as young as he was, he probably would have not survived that. He was in the hospital for 12 days and doesn't remember 11 of those 12 days at all. Remembers very little of it. And on the 12th day, when he could actually function and do what he needed to do, he checked himself out against their wishes and went home and is trying to do the best he can. And even with their help and with regards to insulin and whatever, his blood sugar just will not stay down. So I have no idea. But
Debbie, I've just been working on an article that I'll be getting out here shortly, and I call it, it's almost deja vu. I'm seeing the same things happening now that happened back in the 60s. And what you're describing right now, is like exactly what happened to me. I mean, all of a sudden everything's going fine, everything's working fine, and suddenly I make a phone call, suddenly I get hit, suddenly I'm in the hospital, and I've got no memory of 3 months in the hospital.
Isn't that crazy?
And you don't know. Here's what really, really bothers me. It's like everybody kind of just walked away from me, and my wife told me, well, the doctor saved your life. My response was, no, they tried to kill me. They fed me morphine, Halcyon, Haldol, Valium for 3 months. I've got no memory of that time, and was that just out of the goodness of their hearts? I don't trust hospitals or doctors.
I really don't either. In William's case, though, when he went in the hospital, he had already, you could tell his coloring had already changed, and his circulation had basically stopped. You could see the veins in his entire body because they were just, it was like a web all over his entire body. It was no, it wasn't good.
I'm sorry,
it really wasn't good.
I'm sorry, I chuckled there because when I woke up after my sons finally made them take me off the drugs, I was in a web. I was in a plastic web. They had me like locked into a bed, so I couldn't fall out, so I couldn't, and
right.
It was so strange. We don't know quite who to depend on or trust now.
Well, that is true. I know the emergency room doctors did what they could, and he ended up in ICU for 4 days, and they had to intubate him, so they had to put him out. They had to keep him out because they literally had to strap his hand to the bed because he was trying to pull out all the tubes and things they had connected to him, and it was a scary time. It was a really scary time, and he's doing better now. I read an article because they claim now that he has full-out diabetes. I can't argue with that because of his blood sugar, but I read an article about SEACT, and it's on diabetes and blood sugar normalization, and he's now taking SEACT, and he's doing a bit better. So,
well, good.
But again, people say, a lot of people that aren't even conspiracy-minded, I have to tell you, my family, bless them, my family just, some of what we say they see, some of what we say they don't. And they're not conspiracy-minded, quote-unquote, at all. And my sister told me one day, she says, Debbie, she says, this is too coincidental. He just got back from that trip. And, I didn't say anything to them because I know kind of how they think. Well, my sister comes out and she says, this is awfully coincidental, don't you think? I said, well, of course I think so, but I can't prove it.
You,
There's nothing I can prove.
it's again, here's this deja vu coming back. You know, actually, 15 minutes before my accident, my son called me and I asked him where he wanted me to go next. He said, "Well, where are you, Dad?" I said, "I'm on the north side of Phoenix, Shaker Skin Tattoo Parlor." He said, "Oh, go down 24th Street to McDowell, turn left, go to the wheel shop. It's right there." Okay, see you later, son. And 15 minutes later, some woman hits me 2 blocks from McDowell.
That's something.
Now, I can't prove nothing. I mean, maybe it's just a coincidence that this happened exactly almost 30 days after George Bush, the story broke on George Bush allowing the NSA to tap everybody's phones. And maybe it was just a coincidence that 2 Israeli companies did the tapping of the phones. That was Amdocs and one other one, so.
Right.
But how do you know? And in this article that I'm working on, now this may not apply in your case, but William's done a lot of work. Let's let people know what we're talking about here. He's done Washington, You're Fired. He's done. You just tell us a few of the films.
Oh yeah, he's done Washington, You're Fired. He did 9/11 in Plain Sight, 9/11 Ripple Effect, Beyond Treason, One Nation Under Siege, Don't Tread on Me, Camp FEMA, Enemy of the State, Blood of Patriots. He's done several. And, of course, now we have our new one coming out in support of Ron Paul. That'll get us in trouble with some people because we've actually never taken a political stand before. We've just done film on the egregious nature of our government as a whole. And this film doesn't pull any punches there either, but it does shed a light on Ron Paul and how he is such a constitutional candidate. But the one that got him in trouble, the one that got him his hotel room robbed was Don't Tread on Me. He was going to Oklahoma to do an interview with Charles Key. And, if you know anything about Charles Key, you know that he is highly suspect in the political world because of his stand on not only the Oklahoma City bombing, but on the way taxes should be handled within the United States of America. And the interview he was going to get was Charles Key's announcement of legislation in Oklahoma that would keep the federal tax dollars in Oklahoma and release them to the federal government only if the legislation was constitutional with regards to Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution.
Charles Key, I've known Charles for years, and he's a great man. He's a great man, and he's the target. I mean, he wrote the book on Oklahoma City. And
right, and there's so much information there, and so he is a target, and some of us suspect that may be why they, the nature of that interview was why they kind of got involved there. Why they attacked William. We don't know that for sure. Like I say, it's all kind of conjecture because we can't prove anything. But
right. Again, maybe it's just a coincidence that 2 guys in blue pinstripe suits show up after I wake up in the hospital and ask me if I've been hallucinating when I hadn't mentioned anything about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can thank us for that play. Yeah. Who are you? We're CIA. Yeah. What are you doing in this country, and why are you screwing with me?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, the funny part about it was William is, of course, no one contacted us or anything like you. I mean, we weren't fortunate enough to be on that kind of list, but we know that during the time that William was working with another radio program, and during the time that he was filming Don't Tread on Me, Beyond Treason, and 9/11 in Plain Sight. He's done so many films, I got to keep them straight. But the time that he was doing all that, he actually, we know for a fact that people came in our house while we were gone one day because they messed with things that only the adults would notice. My children would never have noticed it, but the adults knew right away, you know. William and myself knew right away. Yeah, somebody's been here, you know. And so we know they've been in our house, so it's not like we can't say for certain, with no certainty that we've been under surveillance. We know that, you know. But whether or not I can prove something happened during that trip, I really can't. But I have to suspect it. And
No.
like in your case, you know, who knows? Are they sending a message? Do they want us to stop what we're doing? Well, maybe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly what they do. But
Yeah.
I just added a quote in my the article that I'm working on about when Forrestal was talking to McCarthy. McCarthy made the comment, Senator Joe McCarthy, and James Forrestal, who was, thrown out of the 13th floor of the Bethesda Naval Hospital, probably for this comment. McCarthy said something about him being just stupid, but, occasionally, if they were stupid, occasionally they'd make a mistake in our favor, and that
Yeah.
that isn't happening. Now, Ron Paul, I just put up a where is this? I just put up a thing with Rob Paul about a speech that he made in the 2008, talking about hemp and marijuana. Why do we have this illegal? Why do we have this illegal? And I said it's the first time I've heard a presidential candidate talk about this. Because
Right.
to me, if a police officer can walk up and say, "What do you got in your pocket?" Ooh, ooh, that looks like marijuana. I'm going to have to take you to jail. Then you are
Right.
in a police state.
Exactly.
And they did that to rip off and strip America. I mean, anytime a communist regime takes over a country, they go after three people in order, three classes of people in order. The first is the farmers, because they don't want you to be able to feed yourself. Second is the intelligentsia, anyone that's smart enough to know what they're doing. And third is the law enforcement and veterans that are still loyal to the old regime. In other words,
Right.
the oath keepers and people like me that say there's no expiration date on that.
Exactly.
And that's where we're at right now. I mean, they're attacking us, and this whole movement's here. I really want your perspective on this. We've got the Occupy Wall Street movement that started and spread across country. Good thing, and almost every town there's an Occupy movement. Somebody's camping out. Probably homeless people, since we've had over, a couple of million Americans lose their homes. And the Tea Party's in there bitching at each other and fighting at each other, and this is, to me, a perfect example of their whole divide and conquer philosophy.
Exactly.
On one hand, it's really nice to see, a bunch of middle-aged people getting out of their easy boys and getting into the street, but you got Sarah Palin pushing the Tea Parties, and what does she want to do? She wants to bomb Iran.
Right.
And you got the Occupy, and you got the communists coming in the Occupy, taking a shit on police cars, and trying to make the rest of the people that are out there, because they like to see the banks ended, they're making them all look bad. They tried to do the same thing with us with the militias. Oh, the militias. Yeah, Clay started the militias. Yeah, but they forgot to tell you that I did it in the governor's office. What's going on here? And by the way, Ron Paul was a subscriber of mine for 10 years. I've sat in my booth at Expos when we were both speaking. He's a great man. But you got the people that are supposed to be patriots, supposed to be on America's side, and they're going, Ron Paul? Oh, he's a Mason. Didn't you see him give that devil sign? Didn't you see him give the Masonic handshake? Didn't you?
I understand what you're saying, and the huge problem, part of the problem of which is the takeover of the Tea Party. The original Tea Party is not what the Tea Party is today. And the Occupy movement, you notice when the Occupy movement started getting press, because it was in full swing a full 2 weeks or more before it started getting press. No one was talking about it in the beginning. But when it started getting press is when you started finding out George Soros is involved, and Nancy Pelosi has embraced it now, and the unions have taken the sides with Occupy, and the Obama administration has decided that they might be a good thing. And then you have to go back and look at what's going on. Of course, when the Tea Party started, it was all kinds of people. It was not Republicans. It was Republicans, Democrats, independent, third party, people unaffiliated with any party whatsoever, completely disenfranchised with our government of what's going on. And what happened with that is a handful of Republicans decided, we can use this to our advantage, so let's do. And they took over the Tea Party, and now the Tea Party is what it is today. It's been infiltrated, and it's been demonized. The Occupy movement started as, and it actually, some people know this, some people don't, started from an activist bunch in Canada. It had the suggestions. So you have the Occupy movement going on against the banks, which it is, if you're going to be against the banks, and especially against the Federal Reserve and the Independent Banking Society, that's a good thing, because they are the ones that are creating the problems we have in the world today. So there's nothing wrong with that. But then you start seeing these signs that socialist America and all this socialist and communistic type information in this Occupy movement, and then you start hearing that these Democrats and George Soros and some of these other people have basically started supporting the Occupy movement, and now you see that where the right took over the Tea Party, which was unaffiliated with any party, the right took over the Tea Party, now the left is taking over Occupy. And now all of these people with socialistic ideals have joined in this Occupy movement, and it's been infiltrated. And that's what I've seen.
I refer to the Republicans and the Democrats, and I guess you could expand this to the left and the right. Fascism or socialism, it's still dictatorship, it's still totalitarianism, no matter what you call it.
Right.
It's like arguing over what do you call, there's one God, out there, and only one God, and his name's which is it? Is it Yahweh? Is it Allah? Is it yeah? We're dividing and conquer. It's divide and conquer. Again, two wings of the same bird. The Republicans and Democrats. And how do we get past that? How this is what I've been looking at for almost 20 years.
Right. And me too. I haven't been doing it for 20 years. I've been doing it since, I guess, 2001, so 10 years. We've been doing this for 10 years, and within about a year and a half, I realized until people understand this divide and conquer mentality, you're not going to get anywhere, because they are masters of the divide and conquer. And they have found every single way you can possibly divide people. You divide people by political thought. You can divide people by race. You can divide people by religion. You can divide people by nationality. You can divide people by, sex. there are so many ways to divide people, and they employ all of them at the same time. Okay, you're a white American Christian, so you've got to be a radical, right-wing, wacko nut job from hell. You're a black man Christian, you know, or let's say black man Muslim. You're a black man Muslim, so you are a terrorist, radical terrorist, and we need to be afraid of you. You're a woman, and you're looking to be treated with respect. Well, that means that you're a radical, demonizing men woman who just wants to disrupt the family unit. You know, I mean, there are so many ways you could go down the list, you know, and within Christianity, you've got the same thing, if you want to look at that. You've got the Catholics, you've got the Baptists, you've got the Methodists, you've got the Lutherans, you've got the Presbyterians. How many ways can you divide it?
But don't you dare think about going over to that Christian identity sect. You know, they believe that white men are the chosen ones, and God, we can't have that. So they demonize them. They demonize them. I mean, they had them. Matter of fact, in my book, Mystery Babylon, they had the Christian identity listed right after the militias, and I'm sorry, what part of the Second Amendment don't they understand?
Well, exactly. And that, you speak about the Second Amendment, and that is a big issue, because if you look at Article 1, Section 8, let's just talk about that for a minute. Article 1, Section 8 is clear. I mean, number one, we're not supposed to have a standing army. That is constitutional. No standing army. And our founding fathers feared a standing army because they knew a standing army could be corrupted. What's going on with our standing army now? Our political system has convinced our army and the majority of kids that are coming up about to be of age to be drafted, which we don't have a draft, but you know what I'm talking about. They have been so coerced and educated that we have to go bomb the crap out of every other country in the world to protect our freedom. That's not true. And that's one of the things that Ron Paul has been saying. Part of his foreign policy is we're bringing these terrorists here because we will not leave them alone and let them sort out their own business. You know?
That's right. That's right.
Ron
Paul has been right. Ron Paul's been right on just about everything he said. You know,
right. And see, well, I was going to point out your militia for you. You know, in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which Ron Paul says flat out that if what the legislation says does not pass the Constitution test, and that's not his exact word, but it's kind of, then he can't vote for it. And that's why he votes no all the time, because what they propose does not pass the test of constitutional legality. And the Constitution in Article 1, Section 8, this is the Articles of Power. Everybody's heard of that. The Articles of Power, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. It tells you flat out that the government, our federal government's job is to provide for the organizing, arming, and disciplining of the militia, and can call forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union. That's the militia is lawful, constitutionally lawful.
You know, that's what I've been trying to tell people. The ADL will tell you, and I have to give them credit. I give them credit in my article for telling everybody, or a few million people, that Clay Douglas started the militias. He helped start the militia in New Mexico. They just don't tell you that I did it in the governor's office. Governor Gary Johnson, who's running for president right now, you know, we sat in his office and we worked for him. We were under his command and the local sheriff. I just put on an event for the local sheriff in Cochise County here. And you know, we back them. Hey, you know, you can call us militia, you can call us deputy, you can call us an American, but you know, there wasn't any time limit on that oath. And every able-bodied male between the ages of 18 and 45 is the militia.
Exactly. But I'll tell you something further than that. If you look into some of the writings and some of the historical elements of our country, of this country, it wasn't just every able-bodied male. Yes, every able-bodied male, but anyone of age who can handle a gun is considered part of the militia of the United States of America. Anyone who can defend this country is considered part of the militia of the United States of America.
That's right. Now, the local Homeland Security and the some law enforcement divisions in Arizona are fairly upset at an Occupy movement here. Somebody printed off an article that it was written by Larkin Rose. I believe you probably have heard or met Larkin Rose.
I'm familiar with Larkin Rose. I have never met him, but I'm familiar with him.
Well, he put an article on the internet that says, when should you shoot a cop? And he said in the article itself, that question, even without an answer, makes most law-abiding taxpayers go into knee-jerk conniptions. The indoctrinated masses all race to see who can be first and loudest to proclaim that it is never okay to forcibly resist law enforcement. In doing so, they inadvertently demonstrate why so much of human history has been plagued by tyranny and oppression. And he points out, in an ideal world, cops would do nothing except protect people from thieves and attackers, in which case shooting the cop would never be justified. In the real world, however, more injustice, violence, torture, theft, and outright murder has been committed in the name of law enforcement than has been committed in spite of it. And to try to get a little perspective, folks, try watching a documentary or two about some of the atrocities committed by the regimes of Stalin, or Lenin, or Chairman Mao, or Hitler, or Pol Pot, or any number of tyrants in history. Pause the film when the jackboots are about to herd innocent people into cattle cars, gun them down on the edge of a ditch, and then ask yourself the question, when should you shoot a cop? Keep in mind, the evils of those regimes were committed in the name of law enforcement. And as much as the statement may make people cringe, the history of the human race would have been a lot less gruesome if there had been a lot more cop killers around to deal with state mercenaries of these regimes.
And there you go. Well, my point on a lot of this is, and I may disagree with you here, though, my point is that if we're not past this kind of violence, we have not evolved as a country at all. But part of the problem is, and part of the way I see it is exactly what you say, that the cops are so overreaching now. And in Missouri alone, I live in the state of Missouri, and in Missouri, they have the forfeiture reform has gotten out of hand. I mean, they are literally confiscating every piece of property they can confiscate with the notion that, we had a tip that you were involved in drugs. We had a tip that you were dealing marijuana. We had a tip that you were whatever. And regardless, it doesn't matter, because like American forfeiture reform will tell you, they're not out to prove you're guilty. All they want to do is prove you were involved in drugs so they can take your property to build up the police department.
And they don't even have to prove nothing there, like the
exactly.
case of Donald Scott that just wanted his land over there in, I believe it was Catalina.
Well, we've got a guy here that, and it's a big deal in Missouri. It's called what's it called, Swagstock or something, where they get a whole bunch of bands together and this man hosts it on his own property. He's got 100+ acres somewhere in south of where I am, but he actually puts on this show, and people come and camp out. It's like a mini Woodstock type thing, I guess. I don't know. But he doesn't deal in drugs. Now, do some people smoke marijuana on his property? Probably. But they arrested him. Now, he's done this for years. They arrested him recently, this past year, and they are trying to confiscate his property. And they're not trying to prove that he's guilty. You know, they said flat out, well, you know, he owns the property. He wasn't dealing drugs, but he was allowing drugs to be used on his